You know.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Al Tariq Kinney, and I currently serve as your Essex County Surrogate. And today, I wanted to invite you to a very important conversation on adoptions. So we're going to give you enough time to, if you're on Facebook, please share the information on your Facebook. If you're on Twitter and/or YouTube, you have enough opportunity to provide information on either platforms. And so we have a very, very important conversation um, regarding adoptions. So um, let's get started. Today we're going to discuss adoptions as part of our web series with Essex County Surrogates Court. And so our responsibility is to continue to provide families with information and also provide you a resource to use as you family plan during this crisis situation that we're currently experiencing. With us today, we have two very special guests with us. I'm going to do a quick introduction of who they are, and then we would like them to give us more information of their background and what they do. With us first, we have Lori Steinberg, who is an attorney from Pine and Steinberg, located in Summit, New Jersey. She is going to serve as our private attorney as well as provide you guidance because she's been in this space for a few years doing adoption-related work. And we also have Deanna Critchley, who just went dark on our web stream just right before we introduced her. She's currently serves as the deputy county counsel here with the County of Essex, but also she's on loan to us at the county surrogate's office. And we're going to get Deanna back in. We also have our constant, who serves as our deputy surrogate, Vera McDougall. And he's going to provide us more information on the process regarding our court and our office. So, Lori, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you for having us. So tell us who you are.
So, like you said, my name is Lori Steinberg. I am the managing operating partner at Pine and Steinberg, and our firm focuses almost exclusively in the area of family law with a specific expertise or interest in working with adoptions. And we do all kinds of adoptions: foster care adoptions, private placement adoptions, agency adoptions, parent adoptions, same-sex couple adoptions, the whole spectrum.
Okay, great. Deanna, tell us who you are.
Hi, I'm Deanna Critchley. I'm the adoption counsel at the Supreme Court, and I am there to answer questions and process the adoptions that are filed. We receive them, we go through the files, process them, and then assign them to a judge where they are heard. So I'm there to kind of marshal the file through.
Okay. And DeVero?
Vera McDougall, deputy surrogate here in Essex County. I am, in essence, the surrogate's right-hand man, if you will. But what I also want to do is I'm going to turn the camera around real quickly. And this young lady is Sarah Montiel. She also works in the surrogate's court and handles adoption. Deanna handles primarily our DCP&P adoptions, and anything outside of that, this young lady right here, Sarah, handles it.
Hi, I'm Sarah Montiel, the adoption care at the Essex County Service.
So I just wanted to make sure I acknowledge her as well, because she's a critical and important piece. Her and Deanna carries the load when it comes to adoption here.
Thank you, DeVero. So let's get started. What is adoption? So anyone can tackle that first. What is adoption?
I'll start. So, in the most basic sense, adoption is the process by which somebody who is not a biological parent to a child or an adult becomes, in the eyes of the law, the parent to that individual. And that's the most basic understanding of what it is. It is the process of becoming a parent to someone who is not your biological child.
So, what's the difference between adoption and foster care? Is there a distinct difference? Is it the same? What is?
Sure. So, in the state of New Jersey, a lot of people will recognize foster care as handled by what's called DCP&P. That's the Division of Children's Protection and Permanency. And foster care occurs when the state has come in and has taken control over a child, taken guardianship over the child, because the child's biological parents cannot, will not, are not able for a variety of reasons to care for that child. And the state has come in and has placed the child into a home. That home is called a foster home. The foster parents, who have gone through all the steps necessary to be cleared to be a foster family, that family has no legal rights to the child. Foster family basically caring for the child on behalf of the state. And adoption is when by law, you are that child's parent, and the state has nothing to do with it anymore. So foster child is still under the guardianship of the state.
I just want to jump in here. The goal of the division when the child is in foster care is always to get that child back with its biological parent, and they're making reasonable efforts to do that. At some point, if the division determines that the reasonable efforts haven't worked and they're going to move for guardianship over that child, they then do that via a trial and a legal process in the Attorney General's office. And once they get guardianship, then that child is free to be adopted. And in fact, sometimes foster parents do adopt a child. But while they are fostering, they are really just a temporary, like Lori said, a temporary option or parent for that child. But yes, a foster parent could end up, and often do end up, adopting in some cases a child that they have in their care. But they have to go through those legal steps, and it's a process.
So, is there one specific form of adoption, or does adoption come in multiple forms?
There are multiple types of adoption.
Okay.
And adoption doesn't have to be done by a set of people. It doesn't have to be two parents adopting. It can be one parent adopting. Adoptions can be done, like we were just discussing, through foster care, a foster care adoption. Adoptions can be by married couples adopting through an agency, or single people adopting through an agency. There can be step-parent adoption, where a step-parent seeks to adopt the child of their spouse. There are same-sex couple adoptions. There are private placement adoptions, where people amongst themselves have an agreement to have a child adopted. And there are agency adoptions, where there are adoption agencies who have matched up a potential adoptive family with a birth parent for whatever reason cannot care for their child. There are many different types of adoptions.
What are the benefits of a step-parent adoption? Are there any benefits to the child, to the parent?
So with a step-parent adoption, there are a few things that you have to bear in mind. So when you are considering trying to adopt your stepchild, hopefully that's coming from a great place. You've been caring for, loving this child, providing for this child. But there is another birth parent out there. And you can't just decide because you're married to a parent of a child that you can then adopt that child and the other biological parent's rights don't exist anymore. There are a lot of steps that have to be undertaken. And in order for a step parent to adopt their stepchild, one of the things that I think is really important for the public to know, that the other biological parent who's not in the home must be served with notice of the step parent's intent to adopt that child. A lot of times we have people contact my office and they say, well, this other biological parent hasn't been in the picture for 8 years. They've never paid support. They don't send cards on the birthday. They want nothing to do with this kid. Why should I have to let him or her know? The answer is you do. I mean, there's no way around it. The other biological parent must be served, must be given the opportunity to reply, because in essence, what happens is if a step parent is granted the right to adopt their stepchild, they are terminating the parental rights of the other biological parent. And that is a right that is paramount. It's a paramount right. It is a constitutionally protected right. And in order to satisfy certain criteria, the other biological parent is given the opportunity to come forward. And so I think that's the most important thing for anybody who's considering a step parent adoption, that regardless if the other person has not been in the life of the child, we still have to find them, we still have to serve them. And if you don't know where they are, we're going to hire a private investigator and we're going to figure out where they are.
And let me point something out as well, with not only step parent adoption, but all adoptions. And the reason why I want to point this out now, because I noticed one of our viewers is Crystal West Edwards. She's one of the attorneys that has been working with us to talk to the public about estate planning. It's also a estate planning technique as well to ensure that the individual, your stepchild, can inherit from you if you don't have a will, for instance. And so adoption it can be used as an estate planning technique. So if you have any questions regarding how that works, Lori can answer that too, but other kind of questions, make the comments on Facebook, and Crystal West Edwards, who's our attorney that is a preeminent scholar in estate planning, can answer those as well. So I just wanted to point out to you, there's a reason besides us doing adoption because we handle in surrogate's court, but also it all plays into estate planning. Adoption does play in that, whether it's step parent adoption, second parent adoption, adult adoption. If you want to know about adult, there's a little kind of caveat to adult adoption. Lori can address that later, but I just wanted to point that out to the people as well, that it is part of estate planning. You can use adoption for that. And I want to say, in my experience with step parent adoption, having gone and sat in on people like Lori, Joanna, and Sarah when they do these, is the one thing you notice from a lot of times step parent adoption is the child as well as the step parent love each other as if that was their natural born child or their biological parent, and they want to just make sure that's legally recognized as well, because that child a lot of times looks at him as mom, dad, or whatever the case may be, and they want the world to look at him that way as well. That's a lot of times too why step parents adoptions are done even outside of estate planning. I just wanted to kind of point that out as well.
Javiera, we think alike, because I was about to say the exact same thing. When somebody is adopting, and Lori had mentioned this earlier, it's all the legal rights that are attached with the natural parent, including the right to inherit. And when you're at an adoption ceremony, the judge will say to you, as the adoptive parent, you are getting all of the legal rights as if you were the natural parent, including the right of inheritance, but also the obligations that go along with being a parent. So you have that as well. And also that's another reason why Lori talked about the notice requirements of the natural parent, because if that person has any legal obligations that they're paying toward the child, those will cease once the step parent adopts and that other person's rights are terminated.
There was a couple of questions that came up, but so I want to see if we can tackle some of those questions. And so the last question might be the most relevant to, might be relevant to what we're talking about now. If the biological parent, this is from Larry, if the biological parent is paying child support, is it easier to get an address and serve them?
I just want to make sure I understand the question. So if this is for step parent adoption.
For step parent adoption, yes.
And there is the question,
I think
easier to find out where they are because they're paying child support?
I think it's just a matter of a question. This question is more related to if properly serving, because you talked about making sure that the biological parent is served, and I think they're asking is would life be a lot easier to get the address to properly serve them if they were got the address from child support. I think
Well,
that's basically.
I'll tell you something. If the biological parent is paying child support through probation services, certainly, because probation services is when the state gets the child support payment from the biological parent, either through directly from their paycheck, and then forwards it on to the biological parent who's receiving the support payments. Yeah, then probation services would have an address, ostensibly, for that biological parent. Often it's not that easy, but sure. I mean, if you're getting automatic payments through New Jersey probation services, you can probably get the address fairly easily. Yeah.
And look, can you explain in your experience, judges' feelings on, the parents not saying that they can't locate the other individual parent? Like, what are their feelings on that when you come to them and say, "Oh, I can't locate them"?
No excuse. I mean, it's no excuse. That does not fly. I've never seen it fly. Then the answer is, if you don't know where they are, then you do all the necessary steps to figure it out. And if that means you hire a private investigator, you do what's called a skip trace to get the most recent addresses. You contact family members of the other biological parent. You do whatever you can do. And there have been occasions where it has taken, even through my firm, where we have good working relationships with private investigators, months. And, we get 10 different potential leads on where somebody might be, and it comes up no. And we get postal forwarding requests, and we have people with paperwork going and knocking on doors. We can't find them. We have to submit to the court what's called a diligent inquiry. Okay, that's what you have to show the court. An affidavit of diligent inquiry. That means that you have done everything in your power to find out where that other parent is. And it doesn't matter if you're somebody who's going to be filing this paperwork on your own, or if you're an attorney. You have to be able to show that you have done everything to locate the other parent, because what you are trying to do will result, if you are successful, in a termination of their rights. So, I mean, this is not something that will fly with a judge. I just don't know where they are. Not, I just isn't going to accept that.
I think you answered the follow-up question based on the biological parent has not been in the child's life for a number of years. So I think you answered the question regarding hiring a private attorney or do a private investigator, or figuring out how to serve that custodial parent. There was a question that was presented earlier on a thread. Let me just read it to you. It says, my husband and I want to adopt my niece, and maybe you can make this general, not specifically to this person. Adopt my niece who has been monitored by DIFAS. They would not allow us to foster my niece at the time, forward us all the way. How do we go about this now? We've had her since she was 11 months, and now she's 7 years old.
Deanna, can you want to respond to that and talk about venue, where they should file an application? Of course, we're always going to say you should seek an attorney like Lori, but can you discuss venue as well with that, Deanna?
Yeah, I will discuss venue, but if DIFAS is in the picture and they have custody of that child, legal custody, I'm not sure, what the issue is with why they won't let this relative adopt. I don't know. But venue, as far as a DIFAS matter, you can really file in any county where DIFAS has an office in. As far as
if I can just clarify why that is. So DIFAS, and just for our listener, if you hear us using the term DCP&P, that's actually what DIFAS is now. It was called DIFAS for a very long time, and a lot of people still refer to it as DIFAS. Now the agency is called DCP&P, so don't get confused if you hear me saying that instead. DCP&P, the Division of Children's Protection and Permanency, is actually considered to be an adoption agency. And so with respect to venue, An adoption matter can be filed either where the adopting family lives or in any county where that adoption agency has an office. So that reflects the venue question. And oh, I see she's responded a little bit. They sought custody and they have residential custody. Okay, so they have custody. If they have custody, then there's probably not an active DCP and P matter. And so then if they're seeking then to adopt, basically I would imagine that it would be a private adoption.
Mm-hmm.
It would not be a foster care adoption.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's the venue question that comes in with that.
Well, I would advise that person to go to an attorney and try it. They want.
Yes, I would definitely suggest going to an attorney. But in terms of venue, it would be where this participant resides, the county where they reside. Because based upon her question, I'm assuming that this is not a DCP and P matter.
Got it. So the first step is contact you as the attorney. Something with you to file. No, I'm just drawing a scenario out so I could understand it, so the individuals can understand it as well, and then go through the process of filing with the county of their residence. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
And you know what? I see that Ms. Porter did a follow-up, which actually her question is what we talked about earlier, Lori. This is now, let's talk about kinship guardianship, because she was saying, because mom still has her rights or whatever, if she wants mom to continue to have her rights when it comes to custody, explain kinship guardianship. But we also talked about earlier, if you're going to adopt, you got to put the other parent on notice so that parental had to be terminated. But if you're not trying to terminate their rights, could you explain to them what kinship guardianship is?
Sure. So, and again, to the participant who asked the question, I just want you to know that you already have some form, it sounds like, at least some form of legal custody, in which case you may already have very similar rights to what you would have if you had what's called kinship legal guardianship. In a kinship legal guardianship case, the guardian themselves, you would have almost the same decision-making authority over the child as a parent would. And that only goes until the child is 18. Then it's over. Then the legal relationship is over. Because at 18, that child becomes legally an adult and can make all of their own decisions. Whereas if you are a parent to the child, like by virtue of an adoption, that relationship doesn't end at 18. Okay, but if you are the kinship legal guardian of that child, that relationship lasts under a legal sense until the child is 18. Also, the biological parent child doesn't lose all their rights, as we stated earlier, with a KLD matter. The biological parent does have some say. The biological parent has the opportunity to visit with the child. The biological parent can file with the court at any time during the pendency of that KLG, can file with the court to have the KLG lifted. That is really important to know. So the court themselves can reject that. The court can also limit or restrict the visitation that a biological parent might be seeking with a KLG, but the biological parent does have a lot of rights that remain intact, as opposed to an adoption proceeding where the biological parent's rights are terminated and there is zero legal relationship that remains between the child and the parent.
There was a question regarding what's the benefit of guardianship or kinship guardian versus adoption.
She pretty much answered
it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you know, adoption is permanent. Adoption makes you the parent forever. And the adoption terminates biological parents' rights forever. It's a permanent solution. from a legal perspective, the biological family or parents are out of the picture.
There was a question in another forum that says, when a single mom passes away and the dad is not able to be found at all, how will custody work, or would the child have to be adopted if there is no will?
I mean, I think that's more of a question for somebody who probably works for the division, but my understanding is that if no one could be found, first and foremost, CP&P would come in and make sure that that child is placed. I think their first goal is to find a family member to place the child with. And then, but I mean, if there's no will and there's no other parent and a single parent dies, then the state definitely comes in and tries to do what's best for that child.
And is this what we now consider foster care? Is that what we consider this individual?
No,
It depends. I think every situation is going to be different. I think that if
Okay.
Go ahead, Deanna, go ahead.
I would say you're right. They always look for family first. That's the number one goal for them,
Yep.
is to keep the child with family, whether it's a sibling or somebody within the family.
Okay. And the reason why I mentioned the foster care situation, because I know before today, I was just doing some research to even identify, how many children in this country, happen to be in foster care. And I think the number is about 400, almost 500,000, young people are in foster care. And I know there's a huge percentage return back to their biological parents. And, the question becomes, for a parent or a prospective parent, about the process. Like, is it expensive? Is it long? Like, home study, is that a requirement? The educational background? Like, if a person was interested, if I was interested in a private adoption, to help and to be a parent, of a child who's currently in foster care, like, what is it expensive? Like, what's the process? Like, what do I start? Like, home study? Like, what do I do?
Okay, so if you're interested in a foster care adoption, meaning you want to, first you have to become a licensed home through DCP&P. That's basically, you'll be taking some courses. I think they come and they look at your home to make sure that your home is acceptable. Once you're considered a licensed foster parent, I believe there's a mechanism where you can state that your goal is what's called foster to adopt. So that the goal would be that a foster child in your care who might be then become eligible to be adopted if the biological rights of the parent, if the biological parent's rights are terminated. In terms of the cost, it's the most economically feasible manner to adopt a child, because DCP&P basically absorbs all of the costs for the family in terms of the process to get to adoption. DCP&P will do at their cost the home study. DCP&P will do at their cost the background checks of all the adults living in the home, and that includes any other children who may be over the age of 18. So all adults in the home have to have their background checks, their criminal checks done. Again, that cost is absorbed by DCP&P. DCP&P pays the attorney. I mean, when we speak with clients who've retained our firm with respect to a foster adoption, literally the only money that comes out of their pocket is if they want to order additional birth certificates beyond the first one that's paid for by DCP&P. And that's it. But there's, you have to look at the pros and cons, because when you're dealing with DCP&P and you are a foster parent, that basically means you're giving DCP&P access to your life, to your family, to your home for what may be years. I mean, the process is not fast, and you have to be willing to go through that process and accept the fact that there's going to be, inclusion is a very strong word, but you're going to have to give up some of, the autonomy that you have, and allow DCP&P to come in and kind of shepherd the process. So although from a financial perspective, it is definitely the most economically beneficial way to adopt, some people think it is not worth the intrusion into their life. Going the private adoption route can cost thousands and thousands of dollars. So it really all depends upon your circumstances, you know, and what you're willing to give up in order maybe to save some money. You may have to give up a little privacy, and there's just a lot to consider. There are so many different mechanisms for adoption, but a private agency adoption can cost you tens of thousands of dollars at the end of the day.
Devera, maybe you can answer this question as well. Regarding records, is the records open for anyone to find, or is it sealed? How does that work?
So adoption records are sealed, and there's only
I apologize. I can only hear you, Devera, but I couldn't hear anything else.
okay. So his question was about adoption records. Are they open to the public? And the basic answer to that is no. They're not open to the public. There is a process to unseal them, but that's a rare exception for records to be unsealed. So it's not open to the general public. Only the adoptee generally can make a request of the court, and the adoptive parent can make a request of the court to unseal them. But they have to the burden's on them to prove to the judge why they need those records unsealed. And I want to be clear. Even if the judge does approve it, you're not getting the entire record. In essence, all you're getting is the judgment. So we have people all the time request records being sealed so they can see who their biological parents are. That information is not obtained through that mechanism at all. You know, that was been about, I think, 2 years or so where the former governor, Governor Christie, does allow access to birth certificates. So that's the matter that is not handled with surrogates court. That is the provided statistics. So you can go on their website and see how you can potentially obtain your birth certificate.
The original birth certificate.
Right. So original birth certificate, right. Not the birth certificate that gets filed after the adoption happens. But bottom line is adoption records are sealed in the state of New Jersey.
So
if
if
you
a person
wanted to try to unseal them, you have to come to the surrogates court, pay a fee, fill out the records, and those records will go before a judge, and the judge will make that determination.
So if a person is adopted, do they have the same?
Can you hear me? I'm not sure.
Yeah, we heard you.
We can
I
hear
only hear
you.
you, Devera. Okay.
We heard you. No, I wanted to ask a question regarding the birth certificate situation. Is the names changed? Does it stay the same? Like, how does that work?
It's an
Like, for example,
option. That's an option for the adopting parent.
Okay.
When you adopt a child, you can change their name. You can change their first, middle, and last name. You can change part of it. You can change none of it. It's up to you. But in any event, they will receive a brand new birth certificate, because whether or not you change the child's name, what's changing is the child's parent. So even if you have, you know, David Smith Jones, you keep the name David Smith Jones, now there's new parents. And so that new birth certificate will be issued, and the adopting parents will be listed as opposed to biological parents.
And so, what are some of the obstacles that you notice in your profession when people pursue adoptions? Like, what are some of the obstacles that they face, or maybe what can they do to prepare themselves outside of the agencies that they work in compliance with? Like, what are some of the things some of the obstacles you face, and what are some of the things that they can do to overcome those obstacles?
The first one that I see all the time is what we were talking about before with the step parent adoptions. Find out where that other biological parent is. Do everything you can before you start the process to figure out where they are. With respect to agency adoptions, with any other adoptions, actually, I think one thing that potential adopting parents need to know, because this becomes an obstacle that people don't know about in advance, that there are disqualifiers that exist with respect to potential adopting parents. And statutorily, if you've committed certain crimes, you are prohibited from being able to adopt. And it's heartbreaking when you have already tried to start the process and you find out that you are qualified for moving forward. And I think it would be helpful for people to know in advance. For example, crimes against children, including endangering the welfare of a child pornography, child abuse, neglect, abandonment. Those are disqualifiers. You're not going to be able to adopt. Murder, you're not going to be able to adopt. Aggravated assault, you're not going to be able to adopt, but in the second or third degree, you will not be able to adopt for that. Stalking, if you've been found guilty of stalking, you're not going to be able to adopt. So there's a litany of crimes that are disqualifiers, and it's important that people know that, because a lot of times, listen, people have done things and paid the price for it and have served their time and gone to live really wonderful, good lives, and they may still not be able to adopt a child.
It's important that you said that, because the court is going to do a background check, even if people try to leave it out. A background check will be done, just as studies are done. Background check will be done for all adults in that household.
Yep, always. So it's better to come clean right up front. If you are somebody who is sitting down with an attorney and you want to adopt a child, don't let it get halfway down the road and then your background checks come back and you find that the door has been closed. Straight up.
Deanna, maybe you can answer this question. Are there any resources available for children who are being adopted? You know, some of the children, that, I've heard, may go through bouts of depression, anything that they might be facing, crisis, trauma that they've experienced. Are there any resources that an agency provides to that child while they're going through the process, or even when they complete the process of adoption or foster care? Any of those sort of things that you can answer?
I can only speak to DCP&P, but DCP&P, the child goes through that process. They're assigned caseworker who follows that case from its beginnings through the end. And that caseworker usually becomes an advocate for and a friend to that child and can provide resources as needed throughout. Lori, if you know of anything else as well.
So, yes, I believe that the division does, for the foster care adoptions, the division does have a lot of outlets that they can reach out to and organizations to help. I know that there are also organizations throughout the state. I think it's actually Essex County. There's a program, I think it's Essex County, called the Rainbows Program. I think that's like through either NCJW or there might be one up in Bergen County. There are a lot of child support groups that are available to these kids, whether it has to do with through adoption and trying to come to terms with the fact that they're no longer with their biological parents. It's to some extent, it's sort of like grief counseling, because it's the termination of your relationship with family members. But I definitely, if you are a parent who has already adopted, if you did it through the division and you find that your child is struggling, I would call your caseworker back and say, hey, I know that this is finalized, but I need your help and I need guidance to get the right resource for my child. Don't sit on it. Take care of it.
And so that child, from that point moving forward, it no longer maintains contact with their previous family, even the grandparents of the custodian of their biological parents, or the nephews and nieces, or even siblings. Is that something that is required, or is that just please give me some guidance on that?
So when a child is adopted, the new parents have the right to make the determinations about the ongoing relationship that their child will have. And that can include relationships with the extended members of the biological family. We have plenty of cases where adopted children maintain ongoing relationships with their biological family post-adoption. But it doesn't happen all the time. And essentially it comes down to what the adoptive parents believe is in the best interest of their child. And because as the parents, they have the right to make that decision. And it's a high bar for either a sibling, a biological sibling, or a biological grandparent to overcome. If they wanted to continue the relationship with that child, they would have to file an application with the court, and the burden that sibling or grandparent would need to show, not only that it might be in the best interest of the child to continue that relationship, but that it would actually cause harm to the child if that relationship weren't continued. And that's a higher bar. So it's a very difficult thing to overcome. Like I said, it's a determination that can be made by the adoptive parents, and we have plenty of families who have their adopted children maintain ongoing relationships with members of their biological family.
Thank you. Ms. Kettles asked a question about would the mental state or medical history be acceptable criteria for obtaining an unsealed record?
Let me answer that question this way. So as I indicated earlier, if a judge does approve a record to be unsealed, then what will happen is all you receive is the judgment. And that judgment does not talk about medical history or anything else like that. If you're trying to go deeper to get information like that, you have to do what's called an order to cause verify complaint. And I would suggest you get an attorney to help you out with that. And there's no guarantee that a judge will agree to that neither. Because in essence, what Lori is saying is you have to remember these are private matters. Once that child is adopted, that person becomes their child. They do what's in their best interest. And if that means, dealing with the other family, that's great. That's great. If they allow them, if they don't, then that's what that parent decides. But also in terms of that child later on thinks they need to know the medical history, then that judge still is going to look at, it's still a privacy issue for the parent that gave up the child. And so there's no guarantee the judge is going to approve that, but you have to do orders for cause and verify complaint, not request that the records are just, we have a basic form for unsealing records. That's not what you use for this, because what you're trying to get is something more than a judgment.
And the court's going to go to the effort to protect the privacy as much as possible, and give as little information as necessary in those cases. But again, it's up to the court to decide, and it's not this court; it's the Superior Court.
Superior Court.
That's an important point.
Judge, yeah. And remember, the burden is on you. The burden's on you, and it's a high burden. It's a high burden to overcome. So in that case, I would recommend get an attorney.
So all these experiences, you recommend, start with an attorney first. I assume you guys seen experiences where people have initiated this process without an attorney, and but you would recommend, based on your experience, that they should have legal guidance. Is that correct?
Yes.
Listen, Deanna.
I was going to say, legal services, go to legal services. I just that you are leaving yourself open to too many missed things that will become problems later. And you're going to end up having to get an attorney in the end anyway to deal with those problems. So you really want the advice of somebody who knows, who's an expert in that matter. We, as the Surrogates Court, are here to help you, but we cannot give legal advice. So as much as we would love to, we get calls all the time where we want to answer questions, we are just not permitted to. That's not what our role is. So that's why I would send you to somebody like Lori to answer those questions. I would always advise getting an attorney or going to legal services if you can't afford one.
Now I'm going to be upfront and say the two areas that we see that people have done a good job at doing it on their own as pro se litigants are adult adoptions, and the next best is step parent adoptions. But generally, adult adoption is probably one of the easier ones. If it's not one of those, yeah, definitely seek legal counsel. As Deanna just said, if you think finances are an issue, call the legal services, or you can contact the County Bar Association. So if you're in Essex County Bar Association, Monmouth County Bar Association, call the Bar Association, ask them for referrals. And you know, here in Newark, the beauty of being here in Newark, Essex County area, is that Rutgers as well as Seton Hall have services that deal with adoption. We see more Seton Hall than Rutgers dealing with adoption, but they both have you know, services that can help people who can't afford an attorney, a private attorney. So keep that in mind as well, that there are some options out there for you.
I think it's called the Seton Hall Family Law. When I was a student there, I was a member of that, and they did an excellent job. So that's a great point, Tavira.
And so I'm actually posting links to the page. I'm not sure if anyone can see it. So I posted the Essex Bar website as you named. But Lori, if someone wanted to get in contact with you, how would they get in contact with you?
So my website is always an easy way to figure out where we are, and it's an easy name. It's pineandsteinberg.com, pineandsteinberg.com. They can call us anytime. My office is in Summit, New Jersey, but we do adoptions all over the state. We work in every single county. So we're here. If you want to give a call, it's 973-748-8887. So we're here for you.
Thank you.
Hey, there was a question earlier that kind of asked us to kind of tie estate planning into it, even though it was related to her residential custody. I want to kind of let us tie how estate planning works, and I'll just start with the first specific question when she was talking about residential custody. Residential custody, in that case, if you want to make sure that child that you have custody on is going to inherit anything that you have to do a will, because if you don't have a will, and that child is not a blood relative that falls in the line of when you don't have a will, it's called dying intestate, without a will. If you don't have a will, that child may or may not be legally entitled to inherit. So if you want to ensure that child that who you are now caring for will inherit, and they're not blood relative in the line of the intestacy statute, do a will. The will, you can decide who gets your assets. So definitely put a will together for that. And if I want to throw it to Lori and explain, so she can explain, and with the assumption that you don't have a will, what happens if you are a adoptive parent, you adopted a child, can they inherit from you, and vice versa? Can you inherit from that child, and what about the biological parents?
So with just like strictly narrowly considering that question with respect to once an adoption is finalized, that child can inherit from you, and vice versa. You cannot, as an adopted child, inherit from your biological parent once that parent's rights have been terminated, unless there is a right, an inheritance right, that has vested prior to an adoption being finalized. So case in point, let's say we've got a child whose biological mother dies, and that child is entitled to a death benefit, and that is all established and is put into place before an adoption is finalized. That child is still entitled to that death benefit. So with those kinds of exceptions, biological parents' right to be able to have their child inherit from them is otherwise cut off when an adoption occurs.
And then the other thing I want to point out to people, a lot of times people do adult adoptions, and they do adult adoptions for that purpose as well. And there is, for adult adoption, there is one main requirement. If you can point that main requirement out for adult adoption.
The main and really the only significant thing you need to think about in an adult adoption is that the person being adopted needs to consent to it. That is it. You do not need to give the biological parents of an adult, meaning anyone over the age of 18 who is of sound mind, they do not need to be noticed. they do not need to give their consent. Only the person being adopted needs to give their own consent. And that's the big thing. You don't have to deal with serving biological families and biological parents. And that streamlines the process. That makes it a lot easier.
Right. And then the other thing people keep in mind is, and the statute says you have to be 10 years older.
10 years older than the person you're adopting.
But
Yes.
to make exceptions to that, I just want to point out to people, because let's say if you turn, you're 20 something years old and your parents die and you have a younger sibling, the judge can, relax that rule if he believes it's in the best interest of the child. But but it's only 10 years age difference.
Yes. And I know the time is ticking down, but there was a question that popped up on the screen a few questions ago, and I feel like the viewer may have misunderstood the question, and I think that this is important. I don't know if you can go back to that question, but it was somebody who was saying that when they adopt a child, they'll have no access to the medical or mental health record. That's not accurate. No, that's similar.
I think what basically in the adoption process.
Yeah, that's it. So the question is, so adopters could actually be adopting a child with multiple mental disabilities, they have little to no information being privy to. So that's not accurate. When you adopt a child, you, the adopter, get the medical history for that child to the best that it's available. So not always completely available. For example, if you're adopting a foster child, ECP&P will have done a full medical background, not just on the child, but to the extent that it's available on both biological parents. And so you will have all of that. What you might not have is if that information is not readily available and you get the limited information that is, you're not going to be able to go in and unseal medical records of the biological family at some point down the line. But you are going to get medical records about your child. If your child has medical issues, mental health issues, you're going to get all of that. So I just wanted to clarify, because I think that the viewer thought that you're not getting any information on that. You are. To the extent that it exists, you're getting a full medical history, and that is part of what's called a consent packet. And a consent packet is like a full ream of documents that we, the attorneys, put together with help, if it's a foster adoption from the division, or if it's a private agency adoption from the adoption agency, we put together the home study and the petition for adoption, the full medical history. And that all gets submitted to the court. But then that becomes sealed. But the adopting parents will have had access to the medical records of the child.
Absolutely. The only time you wouldn't know is if it's an unknown father, okay? Right. Something like that. But this is a process where I think Devira mentioned this before, you have to be ready to open your home, open yourself, open yourself up to this, because they want to know everything about you as the adoptive parent, just as you want to know everything about this child and about this child's background. And that information is going to be provided wherever possible. Nobody's looking to hide anything from anybody. It's information you need to have as an adoptive parent, and it's information you need to provide about yourself and your family, because they're going to go through with a fine-tooth comb through your background and everything like that.
I have just one last question for you, Lori, and if you can summarize as much as possible. The other type of I want to talk, if you can talk about briefly, is gestational agreements. What are they, and so for individuals who are looking to have kids but cannot have kids, and how it plays into adoption?
So very, very recently, there was a new law passed that does allow for gestational agreements in New Jersey. It comes with a lot of safeguards, not just for the family, the biological family who's going to raise this child, but safeguards for the gestational carrier as well. In New Jersey now, you wish to be a gestational carrier for somebody, you actually already have to have a child of your own. You cannot do it if you don't already have a child of your own. And that might seem like a weird requirement, but this has gone back a long time. I don't know if people who are viewing will remember the Baby M case. Basically, and she did have children of her own, but another new requirement beyond the gestational carrier having to have a child of their own, the gestational carrier cannot have any genetic material of that child. They can be a carrier only. So that protects both the biological family, whose child it is, and the gestational carrier. I'm going to see if I can find, while we have a couple of minutes left, what the actual, the statute itself, and I can direct people there. But it's fairly new, and I mean, we've come a long way, and it's a really comprehensive, newly drafted piece of legislation that protects families and allows for really well prepared and protective gestational carrier agreements between carriers and the biological families.
And in essence, that's what we would in the past would call surrogacy.
Right, right. Gestational carriers are what we would call surrogates, correct?
Two last questions. I think you probably answered this. Does the will allow you to define a guardian who is not the biological parent?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And the last question would be from Ms. Porter. She asked a question, can I get a copy of my niece's DCPP file to be used for the adoption?
Probably not. Those are sealed matters. That's the basic answer. Yeah, and I think if there, and if there was, for a very specific reason, if there was something within the DCP&P file that needed to be reviewed by the court, if anything, the court would do a review in camera, which means the court itself would look at those papers and no one else would. But they certainly, I would imagine that the person adopting would not be privy to that file at all.
Okay.
But I also think if DCPP is no longer involved in this child's life and you now have custody, you don't need to necessarily go back to that file, and you'll proceed as a relative adoption, which is through an attorney.
Yep.
Yes, adoption. DCPP will not be the agency for that.
Right.
And before we go, Altreek, if you don't mind, I just want to give the public our contact information. In particular, I'm going to give them Sarah Montiel, Montiel. Her number is 973-621-4751. If you have general questions about the process, feel free to call Sarah. But as was what was said earlier by Deanna, we cannot give legal advice. Deanna is an attorney, but she can't give legal advice, unfortunately. Sarah can't give legal advice, but we can explain the process. So we can help you out with the process as much as possible. So once again, Sarah Montiel, Montiel. Her telephone number is 973-621-4751, and she is our our adoption clerk here, along with Deanna.
But I do want to say adoption is the best thing to go to court for. There's nothing better.
Agreed.
I have one question and one comment. COVID-19, unfortunately, is this scary thing that's been happening throughout, the last few weeks, last few months. The process, has it changed? Has it been altered? Like, is there any backlog? Like, what's going on, with
at least
adoption?
I can only speak to Essex. What we're doing, we're still accepting adoptions, but it's a little bit of a slower situation because everything's being done remotely. So for example, if I have an order that needs to be signed, it's going remotely to a judge, whereas normally I can walk it over myself and get it signed and handed back. So I'm just waiting longer. But judges are hearing adoptions remotely and by video. So it is happening. Just be a little bit patient because it's not going to happen as quickly as it normally would. At least that's what's happening in Essex. Lori, I don't know if you can speak to other counties.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the majority of counties have at least slowed down only because the resources are now limited. The adoptions that I've been finalizing for the past couple of months have been by Zoom, which is video conferencing, where, I mean, at this point, even the judges are doing it from their own homes. And, you know, it takes a lot to get everybody coordinated. Some counties are still doing them telephonically, but obviously no county is doing in-person adoptions. And so everything it's going at a slightly slower pace, but it's moving forward.
Thank you for everything, for the information that you provided, you know, to our public, and also to be a part of this this web series. One of the things that I think is important is, you know, is how do we structure, you know, families, especially children who are looking for new homes, you know, parents who, well, people who are looking to become parents and looking for children to bring into their homes. And so the work that you do, both of you do, is you know, I don't want to be religious, but it's God's work, right? It's how do I say this? It's good work. I should say good work. It's good work.
Good work. It's good work.
It's good work. It's the only time you go to court where people walk out happy, you know. And so,
With a smile, walk out with a smile. That's right.
So I just want to thank you for the work that you've been called to do, and appreciate all the service that you're able to provide to our residents, and any information that you can provide us, you know, please share with us. We'll post it. And if people want to get in contact with, they will call you at
973-748-8887, and the firm's name is Pine and Steinberg. We're in Summit, New Jersey, but we'll help you wherever you are.
I also just want to say, if there are out there who are really interested in becoming either a foster parent, or interested in adopting and giving a chance to a child who might not otherwise have one, it is a labor of love. Reach out to DCP&P, and they'll tell you about the process and talk through it. I think that there may be people out there that really do want to help and want that opportunity. So please reach out to the division, to DCP&P.
Yeah, they do great work.
Yeah.
And for me is that the happiest moment I've seen, you know, in this court was Adoption Day, and to witness so many new families, you know, to see small children to walk, you know, with new families, and for families committing their home to bring a child inside their home. You know, it's a very, very, not only important day, but it's a very, you know, happy day for all of us. So, you know, thank you, everyone. Please get in contact with Sarah if you want to know more about this process, to initiate the process. Thank you, Deanna, and thank you, Lori, for the information that you provide.
Thanks, everyone.
Everybody stay safe.
Stay safe.
Take care. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.